I'm Kelly Lemon.
And I'm Michael Paul Williams.
And welcome to the After the Monuments podcast, where we look at events and news about race in a historical context and see how, too often, history repeats itself.
Before we get started, After the Monuments is proud to receive support from VCU Massey Cancer Center. Massey Cancer Center wants you to imagine a future without cancer. All it takes is one, a revolutionary idea, a promising clinical trial, or a new breakthrough. See how Massey is developing new approaches to prevent and treat cancer for every person in every community. Learn more about this future for everyone at masseycancercenter.org.
Welcome to another episode of After the Monuments. We're back in here after a great, almost 3 to 4 part series that we are wrapping up about the anniversary of the monuments coming down in Charlottesville, as well as the Unite the Right rally, as we rally is the word of choice.
I just call it the white supremacist march. And, although, as I've pointed out in a recent column, Unite the Right seems appropriate because what we once would have viewed as mainstream politicians and figures on the right seem far more closely aligned to that movement than you would imagine in what's supposed to be an enlightened era.
Yeah. We had 3 really great guests on the podcast, starting off with Devon Henry from Team Henry Enterprises. And a lot of people have heard his name, heard his company, but may have never seen his face. Mm-hmm. You've met him a couple of times, or was that y'all's first interaction?
I'd met him, in the midst of him doing his job, monument removing. So there wasn't time for an extensive chat, but that was the most time I got to spend with him and hear his story.
Yeah. One of the things that I like about this podcast is the realness of it. Mm-hmm. And I felt like, y'all had this man bro moment, I felt like I wasn't here, and we had 2 black men that are making history that were having this deep conversation, and the words that y'all were using and the way that y'all were talking, I understood it completely. And that's the part that I really loved, is that the engagement was real. And Devon is a friend, and I felt like I saw him be comfortable talking about something that was very uncomfortable that he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the fulfillment of a prophecy. John Mitchell Jr., of course, when the Lee Monument went up in 1890, said the black man put it up, and should the day come, the black man will take it down. And here comes Devon Henry to fulfill that prophecy. So that's an amazing story in itself. You had to know that he experienced quite a bit of hardship fulfilling that prophecy. And there were a lot of reports, and people were in their feelings about what he was paid or what the firm was paid, and why this, why that. And you heard that the city couldn't find anyone else, the state couldn't find anyone else to do the job because of ideology or because of fear of worker safety. And just hearing him talk, that fear of safety was real.
Yeah. I mean, he said if he didn't take them down, they'd still be up.
Yeah. And it's a damn shame, really. I mean, here we are. This was 2020, and you're talking about removing something at risk of life that never should have been up in the first place, which to me validates the need to remove them. If something is evoking those sorts of violent impulses, if people, such as white supremacists in Charlottesville, feel so attached to defend them that they will resort to violence, they need to go.
Yeah. We moved on. Wait, before we move on, was there anything that he said that surprised you during the conversation? Or you were like, wow, that I didn't even realize that part?
The extent into which he and others had to protect themselves was something that I figured, but just to hear him acknowledge it, it was sad.
Yeah. And for those that have not gotten a chance to listen yet, I mean, the bulletproof vests were real. Like they had to wear, his whole staff, I think, wore them while they were removing them.
Yeah. It's tragic that, again, in 2020, people had to do that, in the performance of their jobs. Yeah.
We moved on to another brother that, was this your first time meeting Dr. Wes Bellamy?
Yeah. First time meeting him.
Yeah. Who gave me a story that I wasn't ready for. I know Wes. I knew what happened, and I knew his role on being vice mayor, but I had no idea about the premeditation of the white supremacist march that happened, and the fact that he was in communication with one of the leaders of that he was calling this man's home, that, his like Devon, his family and his house and his home were in jeopardy. So talk a little bit about Wes's story.
Yeah, I mean, we cover people from a steady distance, and we write their stories, but to hear just kind of the immediacy of his of risk that he was experiencing in his home, in his neighborhood, and how people had to rally to support him. Just the level of hate that was sent in his direction. Part of it, you want to thank him and anyone else who's willing to do that, but you also wonder why they would do it. It's change ain't easy, and change agents expose themselves to considerable harm, and they're right up in it.
Yeah.
And the folks who you might consider their adversaries, are not an abstraction. They have ties to those communities too.
Yeah.
So it's real. I mean, that's kind of what I got out of it. It's real.
Yeah.
And I had not met him before. Just to see people up close. They're flesh and blood, and they're vulnerable.
They're humans.
They're human.
Yeah.
And people forget that in their assessments, in the politics of it, in the judgments surrounding it. We're not in the 1950s, we're not in the 1960s, but the hate, the vitriol is still real.
Real quick, After the Monuments is proud to thank Team Henry Enterprises for their support of our show. Team Henry Enterprises is a Black-owned contracting firm specializing in office, retail, medical, multifamily, and higher education construction of all scopes and sizes. In the wake of the George Floyd protest, Team Henry is the very firm contracted by the city of Richmond to take down the Confederate monuments in Richmond and by many other municipalities to remove other Confederate monuments around Virginia and throughout the Southeast. Learn more about Team Henry and how they can help your community rebuild, renovate, or design at teamhenryent.com.
Yeah, and the way that he's changed his kind of activism and advocacy work from, being those that he laid down some laws. He put some change in place. Then he went back to the community. And that's to me, the dopest part of the story is that, like, you had to go through absolute hell to know that that's where you were supposed to be. And now you found a way to kind of bring this bright light out of it all with how you're, doing one-on-one work with the community. Yeah.
He seems, like not wanting to be mayor.
Yeah.
Turning that there's a humility there.
Yeah.
Because people often who pursue that life, that political life, they're in it
forever.
To reach they're in it forever, and they're in it to reach the pinnacle.
Yeah.
And there's a seductive quality to that power. Now, if you're catching hell, maybe you want to get out of it.
Yeah.
But to willingly, leave the spotlight like that while still doing the work, is admirable.
Yeah.
And I think, frankly, more people should do it.
Yeah. He is, when we talked to him, we couldn't stop him, right? And so we want to make sure everyone checks out that episode because it's a 2-part episode. But one thing he did do is he introduced us to some other people in Charlottesville that were really making noise. And one of them was Kristen Sakis. Did I say her? I hope I said it. Sakis, because remember she said Sakis or
yeah. Is it Sakis or Sakis? I can't.
We'll have to go back and replay it. Or when you listen to this, you'll hear her say it.
Yeah.
But she was on city council. Well, I think she stated before she got on city council, correct, that the monument should come down. Or how was her? What came first? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it was before.
Yeah.
But 2013 was it?
I think so. Yeah. However, she spit it out so effortlessly, not knowing what she said was going to then also put her in jeopardy.
Yeah, which was kind of a trip because once I heard her backstory, I thought, how could you not know?
Yeah. That she was going to say.
She's from Mississippi.
Yeah. Parents, she's a white woman, and her parents were very active in the civil rights movement.
Oh, they were up in it. I mean, they experienced beatdowns to hear her talk.
Yeah.
Physical harm in their participation in it. Martin Luther King was a house guest.
Yeah.
So she's steeped in that as a child.
Yeah.
So it's not like she's some naive person who had no clue that this could be a thing. Maybe if you experience things in the 1960s and then it's like 2013, you think we moved past that. But yeah, I had no idea that she had that history.
Yeah.
I felt pretty lonely like a couple of years later saying these things need to come down.
Yeah.
I remember New Orleans started having that conversation, but it seems like she predated all of that. And I enjoyed the conversation, but yeah, she, much respect.
Yeah, I learned a lot, not only about, what was going on with civil rights, but she also talked about other things. She brought other races into the conversation and how she has been doing some work. But she also, like Wes, she has said, I'm good. These last 5 years have been enough for her and her family, and she's kind of transitioned on to some other things, but also still within the Charlottesville community, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Wes and Ms. Sakos experienced a lot of trauma. I can't blame them for walking away, to be honest. I'm glad they put in the work.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're still putting in work. But yeah, there's no denying the trauma.
Yeah. You in your one of your August columns, and one of the reasons why we do this podcast is because Michael Paul has a column that comes out not only in the Richmond Times-Dispatch and the printed, but also you can view his columns, additional columns online at richmond.com. And you just talked about Charlottesville. And coming up this week that we're currently in is the official anniversary for the White Supremacist March. That's now what I'm going to call it. And so tell us about what you wrote about, and did these interviews shape any of it?
Yeah, they did. I concluded in the column pretty much that we may have won a battle because, the monuments in Richmond, for the most part, are gone. The monuments in Charlottesville are gone. We won that battle, but it's an open question whether the white supremacists are winning the war. A through line has been drawn from that event, which was the largest white supremacist march of the generation, in a generation, to the insurrection. And you have some of the same players. And we all recall what happened in the aftermath of that. After the violence of the march, Obviously turmoil leading up to it, the violence during the march, and culminating with the murder of Heather Heyer.
Yeah.
And how a sitting U.S. president engaged in a level of both-sidism that I think continues to plague us to this day, drawing a moral equivalency between those who were there to counter-protest, sometimes physically. And, I'm not condoning violence, but to draw a moral equivalency between the counter-protesters in Antifa and the people who instigated the whole thing, the white supremacists, the neo-Nazis, the Klansmen, was odious. And I think that prevails to this day. The impulse, however absurd, to try to blame the insurrection on Antifa and Black Lives Matter is an outgrowth of that sort of stupid both-sidism that is totally detached from reality. I think, you could argue that in Richmond and in Charlottesville, we won the Confederate statues battle. And let's not forget, that is why they were there.
Yeah.
That was their stated reason for being there, to defend the Robert E. Lee statue. And that should give anyone pause who wants to move their mouth to defend the statues staying up or lament that they are gone. These are the folks who were their most ardent defenders, along with the president, along with Trump. But, we're still living with this. I think I quoted Barbara Fields, the historian, in the article, saying the Civil War, it's still going on, and it can still tragically be lost.
Yeah. Michael Paul Williams' column, make sure you check it out. He talks about Charlottesville and the anniversary of the monuments coming down and the white supremacist rally, also known as the Unite the Right rally, or the white supremacist march, also known as the Unite the Right rally. We're going to take a break because we're going to come back and we're going to talk about how some of these things that you just discussed and how that president at the time, he's still in the mix, still causing, the ruckus, but how it all relates to how racism is still very evident in some breaking news. We'll be back with more of After the Monuments, a real talk about race with Michael Paul Williams and Kelli Lemon. After the Monuments is a Virginia Video Network production and produced by Matt Pachilli, Michael Paul Williams, and me, Kelli Lemon. Technical direction and editing from Bill Barksdale. Executive production from Paul Farrell, Diane Salvatore, and Paige Mudd. Will Royer provides studio support. Our artwork is by Krishna Mathis. I'm Kelli Lemon, and we'll see you next week on After the Monuments.